What I wanted to talk to you about today, and I appreciate you covering this, what I wanted to mention to you is something that's about to happen in the state of Louisiana, and of course Caddo Parish is what I'm most interested in, and that's called the Justice Reinvestment Act. It's 10 bills, and we've got copies of those for you. It's 10 bills that were passed by the legislature and signed by the governor that is meant to reform the criminal justice system, or the sentencing and the prison portion of that. There's ways and things that need to be reformed on the criminal justice part of Louisiana, but certainly we don't need to do what we're about to do and what the law was changed, and I'll go into a little bit of detail in just a minute about that. We'll supply you with all the information that you need so that you can do your own research, so that you can look at it yourself. I don't think the citizens of Caddo Parish, and I don't think the citizens of Louisiana know exactly what justice reinvestment is about to do in November. I think we've been led to believe that there's people in our prisons and our jails that are charged with first degree or first possession of marijuana that have been there for months and months, that there's people that are just being held just for money, that there's people that are just being held and no reason to be held. Well, I'm going to give you some examples in a minute about some of the kinds of people that we have that are fixing to be released onto the streets of Caddo Parish and the state of Louisiana. In Caddo Parish alone, starting in November, in the first wave throughout November, we're going to have 192 different people from jail, felons, that are going to be released early. 192 is the last list that we've got. We've got a partial listing of you that we were given, that we were first supplied, and the number continues to grow, and we also have to look outside of Caddo Parish because Caddo Parish generates so many prisoners through our court system and through crime that occurs in Caddo Parish. There's that a lot of times we have to send prisoners to other jails to be located. So we have a lot of Caddo Parish prisoners that are being held in other jails that have been convicted that will be returning to Caddo Parish. And that's 192 at last count. The list that you have is, I assume you have the list already, but the list you have is some 63 people or 64 that are going to be released from CCC during the month of November. If you'll look at that list, I think that you'll be able to dissect and investigate and see what all is going on with that. The reason justice reinvestment was passed in Louisiana was for two reasons. One was for money, because we're in a budget crunch, and it's going to save $262 million over the next 10 years. The other reason was for our standing, or for our reputation. It's been long said that we were the #1 leader in the United States for incarcerating criminals in our criminal justice system. Well, let's face it, somebody got to be #1, and we got some bad dudes around here. We got some folks that need to be in jail. I'm not saying we don't need to reform what we do, but certainly we need to take our time and do like some of the other states and have some programs to work on rehabilitation before we just open the gates and flood the streets with some of these people that don't need to be out. Let me just give you an example while we're talking, and these are just a few of the ones that are about to be released. This first man, not a gentleman, this first criminal has been arrested 52 times under 34 different aliases. He was arrested for second-degree murder and pled to manslaughter. He's been arrested 13 times for simple battery and aggravated battery, 4 times for resisting arrest, 4 times for domestic battery. One of those was by strangulation. A number of DWIs, thefts, trespassings. We're about to let him out 7 years early. He was supposed to stay in jail till 2024. November 1st, he's out of here. Now, you think that man's rehabilitated with that kind of record? I don't think so. Here's another one, 19 arrests, 8 aliases. Multiple times he resists arrest, and that's a clue right there. of somebody's behavior, when they start fighting us and when we're trying to arrest them for them doing something wrong, that tells you about their attitude. Aggravated assaults, batteries, dog fighting, animal cruelty, and a number of drug arrests. These are the kind that you see on TV. They're selling dope and they're fighting dogs and they're training their dogs and tying things to them and all that. Well, he's getting out 8 years early. 8 years early. He was supposed to get out in November of 2025. Here's one with 32 arrests. He's been charged with attempted murder, second-degree battery, drug distribution a number of times, domestic abuse, thefts. He's just getting out 2 years early. And I could go on and on. I have some others in here I've written up, but I don't. One comes to mind is a fellow that he was charged with breaking in 11 burglaries in Caddo Parish. Okay, 11 of your homes in Caddo Parish were broken into. 2 of your cars were stolen. He was sentenced to 4 years 3 months ago. He's about to get out November 1st. He got the lottery. He hit the lottery. Do you think that man who broke into 11 homes, that's how many we charged him with, no telling how many before we caught him, and stole 2 cars, do you think that man is reformed? Now, I'm as compassionate a fellow as you ever going to meet if somebody deserves it, if somebody works for it, if somebody earns it, if somebody's accountable for what they do. But we've got numerous people in here on probation and parole that just continue to screw up, continue to take money from you, and continue to steal your stuff, and continue to hurt you and your kids. And they're about to be let out. The legislature and the governor have made a mistake with this, in my humble opinion, and it needs to be addressed in this next session. I know a lot of our legislators up here voted against this, and I am here quickly to tell you I appreciate that. And the ones that voted for it, I don't believe the ones that voted for it realized everything that's in here. You realize now if you go to jail and you get out and all you've been doing is selling dope and all that, you're a felon drug distributor, you get out now, you get food stamps. That's in the law. If you're a felon and you get out now, you get a occupational license and a business license now. That's in the law. If you have to pay restitution and court costs, the most it can be is 1 day of your month salary. 1 day is the most it can be each month that you pay. And if you pay 12 months, if you pay 1 year, no matter what you owed, the rest is forgiven. So in other words, no matter what you stole from somebody in the restitution or what you have to pay as far as a fine or whatever. So if you're a victim of a crime out there, you should be very concerned. There's crimes now that are automatically paroled without a hearing unless the victim and the district attorney request that there be a hearing. Now, how stupid is that? You've stolen from me, or you've shot me, or you've done something to me, and you can automatically be paroled unless I'm willing to go wherever it takes and testify at this hearing? And it's my responsibility to request a hearing? What about that person that's in jail? What's his responsibility? And that's where we've fallen short. We need to reinvest in our justice system. I agree. We need programs, and I'm not for keeping people down that have stolen something and that maybe made a mistake or done something. But if out there dealing dope and shooting one another and shooting us and possibly shooting our kids and everything else time after time after time, and possessing firearms and they're felons, these people need to be locked up until we're sure that they're not going to reoffend when they get out, or we've done everything possible. And I know I get passionate about things sometimes, and I'm not angry about this. It's just stupid, okay? And I don't think it's what the good citizens of Caddo Parish wanted. And I don't think it's what the good citizens of Louisiana wanted. Sure, we have to do something about our prison population. In Caddo Parish, we worked at the front end of it. Okay, we did a great job of reducing our numbers by getting things through court quicker, by having people, defendants brought to court quicker. We did all that through the Criminal Justice Committee. I'm saying the state could reduce the population tremendously by doing it through the front end and not through the back end. Anyway, you'll see this list you have. You'll also have a whole copy of the law and how the law is being applied by the Department of Corrections, so that you can make your own judgments. You'll be supplied all of that. And so if you have any questions, I'll be willing to answer them or ask any of our folks here. They're familiar with it because we're having to do a lot of work about this.
Sheriff, you sound really mad.
I'm not. I'm just kind of mad.
Oh, well, I hate to see you when
If
you
I
get
was really mad, I'd be cussing, and I don't cuss much.
We know that. One of the things that's in this law, it says possession with intent to distribute marijuana. Previously, conviction carried a 10 minimum mandatory 50-year sentence. Under the new law, you could possess 10,000 pounds or more, and you are immediately eligible for probation. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the amounts of dope that you sell, the amounts of dope that you possess, all of those weights have come down to, and there's no more mandatories on those. There's no more mandatories on heroin. Remember when heroin used to be a life sentence, mandatory life sentence? We didn't have heroin. I used to work undercover, and we'd try to buy heroin everywhere we could in Caddo Parish, and we couldn't do it. Then it went to 10 years, and we started seeing a resurgence of heroin. Now we're fixing to lift everything off of heroin. Tell me what it's going to do. I can tell you. Not only has the weights gone down, the penalties have gone down, but that's not just that. That's on your thefts and your burglaries and your multiple offenders. Fourth offense DWI now can be probated. Now, tell me about that, because it takes an act of Congress and God working together to get somebody to a fourth offense DWI. If you've ever studied the record, you have 3 first offense, 2 second offense, but anyway.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Passionate again.
Yes, I got that.
Sheriff, I'm wondering if you've talked with the probation and parole office here as well, because I know there's some real concern there that they are now being stripped of the tools they have to put people back into prisons or parish jails who violate the terms of their probation and parole, and so I'm just wondering what that might look like and what message this sends to criminals.
We've been talking to them. I've got a letter here from one that says, from our local probation and parole office, state of Louisiana, that says, basically, we no longer will hold people on probation and parole when they mess up. In other words, if you're on probation or parole and you have, if you're out there smoking dope with some armed robbers on the side of the road, you're no longer going to have to go to jail because of associating with felons and having narcotics. Those are just kind of minor things. Now, sure enough, if you rob another store, you'll have to go to jail, but that's because it's robbing the other store. It's not because you're paroled. So, yes, we're working with them, and I can't speak for them on the record, but off the record, I'll tell you that this is unbelievable, some of the things that you know, and I'm not saying there's going to be a bloodbath in Shreveport or in Caddo Parish as soon as November 1st gets here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying these things boil over and boil over and boil over, and finally we're going to have more and more recidivism, and we're going to have more and more crime because of this. These people are not prepared to get out of jail. They have not had the programming that they need to do. They've not had the rehabilitation that they need. The reinvestment, not all the money is going back in, not all the savings is going back into rehabbing prisoners. Some of it's going to the general fund. And so, and I don't know what they're going to do about rehabbing prisoners. So far, they left it at the backs of the sheriffs. I don't know anything about rehabbing a prisoner. Okay, that isn't why I got elected. I got elected to arrest the guy or girl. Now, sure, we've got some great programs. We're learning. We're trying to figure it out, but we are not sociologists. All right? Somebody needs to step in and I don't know, there just needs to be more done before this law takes effect, and there's nothing else we can do for it.
Sheriff, is there any way that you have spoken with anybody in the judicial system, the Louisiana Supreme Court, others, about this, and have you heard? Are they against this? Are they for it?
I really don't want to speak, but the ones I've talked to were against it. I hadn't talked to anybody in the judicial system that said, hey man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Talk about the 192 that are being released in November. Do you have any indication that there are going to be higher numbers in December, January, February as well? Is this just kind of a one-time early?
We don't really know. We know the first wave was going to be about 2,000 to get out. What the governor is after, and these are lofty, I'm not criticizing, is saving money, which who doesn't? I mean, it's wasted money spending on locking people up as far as your return, other than your safety and safety of your vehicle. And the second thing was to try to get us from being number one, and this will drop us, if this works like it should, this will drop us to between number 2 and 3, I believe, which is, just for reputation and money, I think this is too big of a risk that we're taking, just for bragging rights that we're not number one, and just for $26 million a year, which is what the state will save, and most of that be plowed right back into it. It works some places, it may work fine, justice reinvestment. We're not ready for it yet. Not when we're vetting people like this and letting them
Will you be tracking any of these offenders, or are they just out willy-nilly, free?
out. There's no way we can track this many people.
Okay.
I'm sure that a number of them we will have a relationship with in the future. I can assure you of that. Okay.
People outside of the area can make the argument that charges and sentences don't necessarily fit the crime, but these are prisoners, these are felons that you all know. These are the ones that you're familiar with. You know their charges, you know their histories. Do you feel a solution should be more time and more discretion granted to each individual law enforcement agency?
Not any discretion to the law enforcement agency. I'm saying, I guess, right now, since this bad law is about to take effect, bad laws, I'm saying that somebody needs to vet these folks. I mean, it does not take a rocket scientist to see somebody been arrested 52 times for some of this heinous and really violent crimes, and continues while they're on parole and probation to screw up and continue the activity. They don't have a lot of regard for us. And I do. As a sheriff, I got a lot of regard for everybody out there, but less for these folks.
What would be your best solution?
The best solution would be to kind of put the brakes on a little bit and slow this car down, to vet these people, to not be so aggressive in the way that we're just wholesale opening the doors of the jail up, that we look at the ones and start small, that we make sure they're rehabilitated or have had every program and every chance that we can, and that you let some of the lesser, there's some folks on here, sure, they got 18 months left maybe, and they got, that sort of thing, and they were in jail. This is the 5th time they sold dope, and they, you don't find many of them on there like that, but let's start small. Let's not just take the keys to the jail and hand them back over. This isn't Mayberry. This is people that are carrying ARs and breaking into our houses and stealing our cars.
Sheriff, they did something similar in California. I think it was more than a decade ago, where to make the state level look good, they cut the numbers, but then the parish jails, which, as you mentioned, they don't have the same resources for rehabilitative services.
Right.
They then had to absorb all of these criminals. And so I'm wondering if you'd like to make a statement about that, or just about, I know that it said that 30% is going to be reinvested in the parish jails in terms of rehabilitative services, programs, employment. Is that enough, or do you need specialized training? Like what, and should a parish jail even be a mini rehabilitation center?
Well, the parish jails in Louisiana, the state, in order to save money, rather than holding prisoners, 100 years ago, the parish, that's not actual, but a lot of years ago, the parish sheriff started holding prisoners, and they were willing to take a lesser amount than the state was charged for, was having to pay. We have, since I've been the sheriff of Caddo Parish, I don't run a place out there. I don't want state prisoners, okay? They are a necessary evil to keep the doors open, that we keep a few, or keep some out there. And that's the ones that you can work. That's the ones that can pick up trash, the work release programs. But guess what? Those are the ones that they're releasing. In addition to the bad ones, and I call these bad, in addition to them, they're releasing some good ones that we use every day to wash cars, to change oil in our cars, to cook in the kitchens, to do all that where we save money. Well, they're going to let them out. The ones that we use in our work release program, they're going to let them out. And they're saying you can take a little worse criminal, because we're going to loosen up the standards that you can use them. And so instead of somebody with 4 years left in his sentence working at a factory somewhere, now they're going to say, we're going to let you use somebody with 5 years. Well, I'm not doing that. I mean, at some point, a person, it's more beneficial for them to run off. And so there's so many aspects of this. There was one law enforcement person on this whole committee. I wish I'd been on there.
Why weren't you?
Well, I don't know, but I would have probably spoken what I was thinking, but anyway, and like I say, I'm not being critical of the entire effort. I'm not being critical on the desire to save money, the desire to have less prisoners than other states, but I am being critical on the means in which it's going about and the entire law or portions of the law.
I just had somebody on Facebook say, ask the sheriff, was the Sheriff's Association for or against this?
The Sheriff's Association was against this. We came out against this. I think the DA's Association may have been for it. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. But I know the Sheriff's Association was against this. But anyway, we'll see how it comes. But the purpose of this is so that the citizens and you in the media, I don't think you all really knew everything about this, because it kind of flew under the radar. And when it was passed, it seemed like to be a great thing. But there's portions of this that isn't great, and it's not being applied as great. Any other questions?
Going once?
You appreciate it. Appreciate you covering it.